Zelensky's first month in office, he was given a threat letter, effectively, by the U.S. State Department, where they had something like 70 U.S.-funded NGOs who wrote a letter to Zelensky telling him, ordering him not to cross the below-listed red lines, or else there will be political instability in your country. Now,
this is in response for what happened.
Okay, so let's pause there. I'm going to pull up the memo on screen. Elections were held on March 31st, 2019. April 2019 is when elections conclude. This Red Lines memo was issued in May 2019, 1 month after the new elections. Now, the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, guess who funds the Ukraine Crisis Media Center? Who is writing this Red Lines memo? Again, we present a list of red lines not to be crossed. Should the newly elected president cross these red lines, there will be political instability and you will be smart mobbed, rent-a-rioted out of office. This covers everything Zelensky is allowed to do on security issues for Ukraine, foreign policy issues for Ukraine, economic issues for Ukraine, national identity, language, and education and culture issues for Ukraine, media and information policy for Ukraine, government functioning for Ukraine, whether you can take a shit in a public toilet or not in Ukraine. And who is this message coming from? It's coming from the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Embassy, right there in the Capitol, and USAID, the CIA. And who else? The National Endowment for Democracy, the CIA. Oh, and who else? Fucking NATO. And who else? Internews, which is the Operation Mockingbird funded by the State Department. Oh, and Chemonics, which is the private NGO CIA. Literally, the creator of Chemonics said he created Chemonics because he always wanted to operate a private CIA. Okay? So this is coming from the CIA, the State Department, and USAID, with a bunch of other partners internationally, as well as fucking NATO. And that is who is telling the newly elected president, just 1 month after the election, less than a month, everything that he is and is not allowed to do on security of the country that he got elected to run, foreign policy of the country he's been elected to run, economic issues for the country that he's just been elected to run, national identity, language, education, and culture issues for the country he was elected to run, media and information policy in the country he's elected to run, and government functioning of the country he's about to run. So who's really running your fucking country? If you're not allowed to cross these red lines, lest political instability is unleashed on you by the U.S. State Department, the funding arm of the CIA, the action arm of the CIA, and NATO. Should I have pulled this up on screen? I mentioned it twice. I was hoping that Jamie would pull it up. But remember, at this point, we hadn't pulled up anything on screen yet. So I was getting anxious. I was like, I want you guys to see this. So look at this. You want to just read some of these red lines? This is 2019. We, the underside, members of civil society organizations, know you're fucking CIA cutouts. And you have to say that you're members of civil society. These are the democratic institutions funded by the U.S. government, funded by NATO, funded by the State Department, funded by USAID. You are the U.S. State Department. You are USAID. You are NATO. But you don't want your fingerprints on it. You don't want the State Department's fingers on the gun. You don't want the U.S. Embassy's fingers on the gun. You don't want USAID's fingers on the gun. You don't want NATO's fingers on the gun, because that would put the motherfucking lie to the concept of democracy. And foreign interference, like they said about what Russia did to us. No, 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 no. It has to look like it's simply coming from independent civil society, which is funded by and reports to their grant officer and reports to the House Foreign Affairs Committee and reports to the White House on whether they have successfully enforced the thing in their grants, issuing red lines memos to control the government of Ukraine. This is the top, knowing it doesn't want its fingerprints of looking top down, because that's a diplomatic incident. That makes Ukraine look like a vassal state. So they astroturf the bottom up, but everyone knows who the bottom up is speaking to, especially Zelensky, because that's the only reason he got into power in the first place. And you'll see just all of these State Department funded organizations. It's crazy. By the way, the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, it's the same network that did Russiagate here in the U.S. Who started Russiagate? Lindsey Graham encouraged John McCain to turn the Trump-Russia dossier over to the FBI. How did that start? Former John McCain aide David Kramer approached John McCain, the Arizona senator, after the 2016 election with former British spy Christopher Steele's dossier of Trump-Russia connections. And then McCain said he delivered the documents to the FBI. In November 2016, a former British ambassador to Russia who knew about what Steele had researched with McCain, the staffer Christopher Brose, and David Kramer, a former State Department official who worked alongside McCain. So David Kramer worked for the State Department, worked for John McCain, and set in motion the events that would become the Christopher Steele dossier. Kramer shared the Steele dossier with John McCain. John McCain gives it to the FBI. Well, here's David Kramer right after the coup in 2014. Look at how many times David Kramer is at the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, the very place issuing the Red Lines memo to Ukraine about what they can and can't do. And he's the one who feels Ukraine is threatened by Trump's policy, Russia policy,
welcome.
and sets in motion Russiagate.
Thank you very much, Natalia. It's a great privilege for me to be here and join you today. I am in Kiev.
Okay, so this is the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. It is the State Department outpost, funded by the State Department, funded by USAID, funded by the National Endowment for Democracy, and funded by NATO. And they are the ones who are saying, in 2019, red lines not to be crossed. This is like Obama saying to Syria in 2016, red lines about the use of sarin gas, not to be crossed, or else we'll invade. This is the State Department's emissaries saying the same thing to Zelensky before he's even taken a shit on the Capitol building toilet. Security issues, red lines not to be crossed, holding a referendum on the negotiations format to be used with the Russian Federations and on the principles of a peaceful settlement. Ukraine is not allowed to decide its peace posture with Russia. Now, mind you, this is 3 years before Russia even invaded. Why? Because the U.S. State Department and the UK Foreign Office, again, the U.S., the UK, so it's Christopher Steele, David Kramer, same 1-2 punch, transatlantic flank attack every time, because they wanted to militarily reconquer East Ukraine, which had broken away, not respecting the Victoria Nuland coup government in Kiev since 2014. So they did not want peace with Russia or a peaceful settlement unless the Ukraine Crisis Media Center's financial sponsors, the friggin' State Department and USAID and CIA and NATO, gave them the blessing. They are not allowed to determine their own posture on that. They're a pawn, a vassal, conducting separate negotiations, without the participation of Ukraine's Western partners with the Russian Federation as it pertains to Donetsk, Luhansk, Crimea, Sevastopol. So Ukraine is not allowed to negotiate with Russia unless Ukraine's dog owners, the U.S. State Department, lets them. That's what they define democracy as. The dog owners. Okay? NATO, State Department, USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, Chemonics. They're supposed to be a sovereign country. I thought they had democratic elections. Oh, no. Unless you want political instability unleashed on your streets, that's a red line not to be crossed. Fulfilling ultimatum requirements by Russia, making concessions about territory, not allowed. Red line from the U.S. State Department. Foreign policy issues, delaying, sabotaging, or rejecting the strategic course for EU and NATO membership. Ukraine is not allowed to vote their way out of joining NATO in 2019. Unless political stability they want to be unleashed by the State Department and NATO on their own government. The new government, less than a month after being elected, is given these red lines directly from this cutout organization with 70 U.S.-funded NGOs all underneath of it that's housed by the State Department. You must join the EU. You must join NATO. You are not allowed to make your own decision about that. We will absorb you into our empire, and if you kick and scream and fight us on the way to you being absorbed into our Borg, we will neutralize you with riots on the streets, the same riots that you have to thank for your occupation of the toilet seat that you currently call a Ukrainian throne. Initiating any actions that might contribute to the reduction or lifting of sanctions against Russia by Ukraine's international partners. Hey, you want cheap gas? You want cheap energy? You want import exports? Nope, you're not allowed. That's another red line. That's another State Department red line. We'll riot you out of office again. Attempting to review. Thou shalt, these are the 10 commandments from the State Department to the newly elected Zelensky government. You cannot even review any actions aimed at supporting international solidarity for Ukraine, restoring our territorial integrity. R. What do you mean R? Oh, because they're trying to fool you to think, oh, it's by Ukrainians. No. It's by NATO and the State Department and USAID and the State Department's media arm and the CIA cutout, totally funded 100% by the U.S. government and our private CIA chemonics. But this is how they astroturf it. Attempting to even review any of it. You can't even look under the hood. Economic issues, implementing policies against existing agreements with the IMF. So the banker debt plunder. You cannot fuck with the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the bankster gangsters of globalism. The supervillain in Confessions of an Economic Hitman. You cannot oppose the IMF. You cannot oppose the State Department. You cannot oppose NATO. National identity, attempting to review the language law, attempting to review the law on education, transferring education ownership out of Ukraine and into an EU commissioning body, implementing any actions aimed at undermining or discrediting the Orthodox Church of Ukraine or supporting the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, the Russian Orthodox Church. The State Department, month one, banned Zelensky from supporting religious pluralism. The control was all the way down to their fucking religion. Media and information policy. Restoring Russian social networks and Russian TV channels in Ukraine. So the State Department had already, along with NATO, set up these censorship cells to ban Russian social media networks and social media accounts from influencing the hearts and minds of Ukraine. If you want internet freedom in Ukraine, you'll be cooed out of office, Mr. President. Undersigned the U.S. State Department. Because the media and information policy is designed to keep the people dumb and keep the people from hearing a diversity of opinions, because the only opinions they're allowed to hear are the ones that are funded by USAID, the U.S. Embassy, the National Endowment for Democracy, and Internews, which is fully funded by the U.S. State Department. Government functioning. A red line includes rehabilitating or encouraging the return to politics of members of former President Viktor Yanukovych's regime. You are not allowed to, this democracy means not allowing the elected government from 5 years ago to return to politics in your country. Democracy means not allowing the guy who was president 5 years ago from being able to run in these democratic elections. Do you understand how tight the vice grip on Zelensky's balls is that the U.S. State Department has? Here's another red line that shall not be crossed. Ignoring dialogue with civil society. Because you know what that means. Civil society is the fake AstroTurf front of CIA ops and CIA shops, CIA blob ops shops. If you ignore us, we will unleash hell on you. Oh, but they're just civil society. No, they are the back channels. They're the interlocutors. They are the messenger delivery system on behalf of the State Department so that the State Department does not have the diplomatic blowback of looking like they made all this happen. They are the astroturfed, pumped up assets of the State Department, the CIA, and NATO. And if you ignore them, we will unleash political instability on you. They're also forced to turn over their judicial system to them. I mean, isn't it amazing? Like, and I skipped over a bunch of these in the interest of time. Should I have put that on screen for Rogan? Or would that have taken up too much time? Because I sort of wish I could have put that on screen because we talked about it twice. What do you guys think? How many of you guys have seen this before? But this is what I say, control by democratic institutions. You think that's just Ukraine? That's every country that we put our claws on. The democratic institutions. This is what, when I try to talk about the long octopus arms of state, this is what it looks like. Look how many Ukrainian civil society organizations co-signed this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 70. A swarm army, not 70 individuals, 70 institutions comprised of mobs of their own people, all answering the State Department call to serve as a white blood cell to attack the virus of an elected government so that it cannot escape the immune system of the blob.